On the eve of signing day, five-star cornerback Kade Phillips flips from LSU to Texas. Why did it happen? How does LSU respond? We'll talk about it. It's Locked on LSU bonus coverage. Let's go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. Coming to you with a little bit of an emergency pod bonus coverage here. As we record, it is Tuesday, December the 3rd. Don't typically like to date the pods, but we are here on the eve of the early signing period. And LSU got some unexpected and unfortunate news on Tuesday morning when five-star cornerback Kade Phillips announced he is flipping his commitment from LSU to the University of Texas. So let me do this. I'll give you a little bit of a thumbnail on Kade Phillips, and I'll tell you how this happened, how LSU responds, and some big picture takeaways here. We'll do it in sort of an abbreviated format here today. So Kade Phillips, if you're not familiar, is out of the state of Texas. It was a pretty big win for LSU when they got Kade Phillips' commitment over Texas. As a matter of fact, this past weekend, the final playing day of the regular season, Phillips was supposed to be visiting Texas and instead didn't make a visit. It was a big win for LSU to be able to keep Phillips sort of in the boat of this class. He's out of Missouri City, Texas, which is the Houston area, 6 foot, 185. He had been a four-star throughout his recruitment process. He just recently, in the most recent updated rankings a couple of weeks ago from On3, was upgraded to a five-star. So On3 has him as a five-star. 24/7 ESPN and Rivals have him all as a four-star. He is the number 34 player in the country in the composite, the fifth best cornerback in the country in the composite. On3 has him as the fourth best corner. Rivals has him as the 16th best corner. So just so you understand sort of the range there that we're speaking of. So why and how did this happen? Well, I think we all know at this point why it happened. It's money. I mean, this is a guy who had been committed to LSU since for some time now, and since early fall. And now on the eve of signing day has flipped his commitment to the in-state Texas Longhorns, who I think we all understand have a lot of resources. I will tell you the numbers. I shared the numbers with you for Bryce Underwood, and I got the numbers on Kade Phillips. So LSU's offer for Kade Phillips was 2 years at $800,000 per year. So LSU is willing to pony up $1.6 million over 2 years for Kade Phillips. Texas offered 1 year, $1 million. So for an extra $200K for this first year, Texas got Kade Phillips to flip. It's my understanding that LSU did not want to counter. They did not want to go higher than the number that they had committed. So again, that $200,000 for next year isn't a massive gap. But I think there's a little bit of fiscal discipline. The optics are terrible. There's no way around that. Okay, you've now lost Bryce Underwood and you've lost Kade Phillips. It's 2 5-stars in your class. I'm not disagreeing with that, and this may end up in time proving to be the wrong thing. Maybe they should have gone up and continued to push to keep Kade Phillips' commitment. But if ultimately the decision LSU made is they have their budget, so to speak, their salary cap with the rev share, and they have a certain amount allocated for each position, and they've decided what they're willing to spend, and they're not going to go over it, okay. Well, you have to have a plan then for what to do. Because when you look at the cornerback room, you're obviously losing Zy Alexander, and you've still got DJ Pickett committed, who's a 5-star, number 1 cornerback in the country. And I think everyone who today is looking at this going, well, can you really keep DJ Pickett committed? Maybe not. Miami and Oregon are the other two players there. They've got more money than LSU. If Miami and Oregon decide they want to drop a Bryce Underwood-like bag on that player, LSU's not going to match it. They can't. They won't. My hope is come Wednesday, DJ Pickett signs with LSU. He was in Baton Rouge this past weekend. I shared with you on a previous episode that he's said all the right things. He's 100% committed to LSU, wants to come to LSU, be developed by Corey Raymond. And LSU has a very healthy NIL offer on the table for DJ Pickett. It's a guy they want to keep, and he is the singular priority remaining in this high school class. After DJ Pickett, you've got Aiden Anding, the number one cornerback in Louisiana, committed. So now that you've lost out here on Kade Phillips, who's a guy, of course, like I'll say the same thing about Kade Phillips that I said about Bryce Underwood that I've been telling you about Jakeem Stewart, and I'll say it here as well. Two things can be true. Do you want Kade Phillips in your class? Absolutely you do. You invested so much time and resource into recruiting him, getting him committed, keeping him committed. You want Kade Phillips in your class. It is disappointing that he is decommitted and flipped to Texas. Yes, that is true. Now, let's look at another truth. Are you willing to spend an unlimited amount of money in this class for one player, or would you rather take those funds and allocate them to the portal for a more established college football player that can be an immediate impact guy? Can you win with that approach? And the answer is yes to both. You could get Kade Phillips and recruit and develop and have him for 3 or 4 years on campus, or you could say, we're going to take those funds instead and find an immediate impact guy that's going to help us win in 2025. Now, I do want to come back to that because that would seemingly signal a change in approach for Brian Kelly and this LSU program moving forward. But again, I'll come back to that here in just a second. So the question now becomes, what do you do? Who do you go get? Well, you probably noticed also on Tuesday, that Jakeem Jackson, a cornerback from Florida, entered the transfer portal. Now, Jakeem Jackson was in the class of 2023, so he just finished his second year in Gainesville. He played in 11 games as a freshman, and then this past year in 2024, he started the first 2 games for Florida, suffered an injury, and missed the remainder of the season. He played against Miami, played against Samford, was injured, and missed the remainder of the season. This is a guy who was the number 3 cornerback in America in the class of 2023, the number 40 overall prospect. So he was an Under Armour All-American. Again, so Jakeem Jackson, who, by the way, was recruited to Florida and signed with Corey Raymond, Jakeem Jackson was the number on 3, had him as the number 3 corner and the number 40 overall player. Kade Phillips has on 3 has Kade Phillips as the number 4 corner and the number 23 overall player. The composite is the number 5 corner and the number 34 overall player. So you're talking about guys with their recruiting profile that are very similar. And Corey Raymond, again, recruited Jakeem Jackson to Florida. The feeling today, as I understand it, is LSU is going to be a player for Jakeem Jackson. So let me ask it to you this way. You lose Kade Phillips, a top 5 corner in the country. If you get Jakeem Jackson from Florida, who will enter the transfer portal, would you take that trade? Like, would you take that trade? Meaning, would you feel good about having, you miss Kade Phillips, but you get Jakeem Jackson? Would you feel good about that? I would, especially if it's Corey Raymond who recruited Jakeem Jackson to Florida and wants him in Baton Rouge. Now, you got to get him to Baton Rouge. That's the other part of this, which is the most integral part of what we're talking about. If I was going to say it to you as plainly as I possibly can, it's this way. I understand the optics of losing high school recruits are terrible. I understand if you're hanging out on Twitter today, it stinks to have all the other programs crapping on you and criticizing you and laughing at you. I get it. I understand the optics of that are not good. What I would also say is, if you're looking at 2025, there's been, and please, my apologies, lost connection there in the middle of that point, so I'll pick up and try to make this point again. When I look at it for 2025, there's a 3-pronged approach that I talked about in a previous episode. Who do you get returning from the 2024 roster? Finish the 2025 signing class and go ham in the portal because Brian Kelly has said they're going to be aggressive in the portal. Okay. So while the optics of losing Kade Phillips sting and Bryce Underwood sting, and yes, you want those very good players part of your program. Who's coming back? How do you finish the 25 class? What if you keep DJ Pickett? What if you sign Jakeem Stewart? All those things could be. What if you flip Solomon Thomas? Oh, we'll see. Maybe they don't, but we'll see how it all goes. And then what do you do in the portal? Because if what you're telling me is you're not going to overspend for high school players so you can get impact guys out of the portal, great. You've got to go get the impact guys out of the portal. So I'm not saying it's all fine and there's nothing to see here while the flames are burning everywhere. What I'm telling you is I'm willing to wait a month. I'm willing to wait a month to see who comes back for 2025 and how you do in the transfer portal, because that's what Brian Kelly has said. They're going to be more aggressive and spend in the portal this year to get impact guys. Let's see how that goes. Now, to some, that would sound like a contradiction to the approach LSU took a year ago, and I want to talk about that as we continue Locked on LSU, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Hey, if you want to be at live events, if you love attending live events like I do, Game Time can make it happen. Game Time is the best ticketing app that I have personally ever used. You can filter only incredible deals on great seats with Game Time picks. You can see the view from your seat on your phone before you buy. And I love the all-in pricing feature. So many of you have told me that as well. You have to turn that feature on, but when you toggle, it'll tell you the final price, the total price up front before you buy, and you can buy in just a couple of taps. It's over at Game Time. Check it out. It's Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with the code LOCKEDONCollege. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Okay, so one of the things we've talked pretty consistently about as far as LSU's roster build is trying to build through the high school ranks and supplement through the portal. That's been Brian Kelly's approach. And you've seen that from his first year where they signed nearly 20 guys out of the portal to reducing that number to about a dozen to then single digits this past year. As they go into this year, you've seen that invert. More emphasis on high school and supplementing through the portal. So as we sit here today and we're talking about LSU not overspending on high school players and instead allocating that money to the portal, it may sound like a contradiction. What I would argue, and again, I'm not going to pound the table and tell you definitively this is right. Just like when Brian Kelly explained his approach of building through the high school ranks, developing and supplementing with the portal, it contrasted, I should say, what Lane Kiffin did this year at Ole Miss, which is they went ham in the portal. They signed 25, 30 guys in the portal and built their roster out of the portal. And what I said before the season is I don't know which is right. We haven't lived through a 12-team playoff era yet to know which is the right way to do it. We're just going to keep evolving as we see a sample size grow. And I think what we're seeing right now is as that sample size grows, we're seeing an evolution. Last year, by Brian Kelly's own admission, they were quote unquote under the cap, right? They didn't spend as much as they should have in the portal last year for impact guys. That doesn't mean you should go sign 30 portal guys. LSU, as it sits right now with Kade Phillips' decommitment, is at 24 high school commitments. And you still have the possibility of Jakeem Stewart, which could be 25. You have the possibility of Solomon Thomas, which could be 26. You could also still lose a guy like Derek Meadows. You could still lose Mike Tyler. I mean, there's going to be more fluidity, but let's say you're in that 20 to 25 high school signee range. You're not signing 25 guys out of the portal. What if you go sign 10 out of the portal, but the 10 you sign out of the portal are impact guys? I think that's the difference from a year ago, where maybe you had intended to be a little more aggressive in the portal. You missed. You got some guys that are contributors, but not key contributors. Like Gio Paez, I think, gave you a lot of great reps at defensive tackle. But what if you went and got Walter Nolan? I think that's the difference that we're talking about here. You look at a guy like Jordan Gilbert, who played for you at safety, but what if you had gotten Caleb Downs? Right? Like, that's what I think we're talking about as the difference. And Downs may be a little bit of an extreme example, but instead of just getting serviceable bodies who give you some depth in a rotation, what if you go get 8 to 10 impact guys out of the portal? I think that's the difference, and that's what we're seeing. But I'll say it again. I'm not telling you all's fine and dandy. I'm not telling you don't worry about Bryce Underwood, don't worry about Kade Phillips. What I'm telling you is I'll continue to say it. Two things can be true at the same time. Yes, you could want Bryce Underwood. You could want Kade Phillips. And maybe LSU needs to change the way it approaches recruiting, because you invest so many resources into the years of recruiting these guys only to have them plucked away on signing day eve because someone with more money dropped a bag. Okay. That's another tangent, another conversation, a different day. But that's one thing that can be true. You want those guys. The other thing can also be true is you can still build a championship roster. There's a path to building a championship roster. And it starts with getting your veterans back, starting with Garrett Nussmeier. You have to finish off this 25 class. Losing Kade Phillips stinks. But for the holes that you'll have in this 25 class and on your roster as you see it right now, you've got to go supplement with the transfer portal. So what I will say today is I'll wait a month. I'll wait a month to see, after all the draft decisions, who's coming back. When the portal window closes, which guys are staying at LSU, which guys hit the portal. And when the portal window closes, which key portal targets have you added? At that point, a month from now, I'll have a much better sense of what the 25 roster is going to look like. And that'll be a great determining factor into whether or not this approach is successful. If this coaching staff, this Austin Thomas, the GM, Brian Kelly, Frank Wilson, the recruiting coordinator, if they decided they didn't want to go up to $1 million for Kade Phillips and they'd rather take that extra $200K and allocate it toward the portal, great. Okay, I'm okay with that. But you got to hit in the portal. Can you? Ask me in a month. We'll have a full signing day preview on our full Locked On episode for Wednesday, and you better believe we'll recap it all here as well. Hey, thanks so much for making us your first listen. If you're on a podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app, rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. One of the best ways to help us grow is to leave your comments below. And remember, let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you every single day for Locked On LSU, your team every day.